Guys you had to let go, as you knew would probably hurt. Jimmy Moreland, corner, Peyton Barber, maybe among them. Can you explain, I guess, the decision behind those moves?
Well, I think the biggest thing is with the running back situation, we thought Jarrett had a pretty good camp, and he's a young guy that we want to take a little bit of a look at, and we'll just go from there as far as that position is concerned. And then as far as defensive back, we really like what Torrey gave us. We thought Torrey McTire had a very good camp. He really showed, and that was one of the really good things one of the things we really looked at was that position, because that was a tough position for us.
And then for both of you, Ron, with Martin new here, how much does it help when you're evaluating some of the guys you had last year, some of the guys who have been here? How much does it help to have the fresh eyes? And Martin, I guess for you, coming in from the outside, evaluating these guys, what was your process and your input on all that?
Oh, I really appreciate the fresh eyes. Martin and Marty and their staffs of guys came in and gave us a whole different perspective on our football team. So I thought that was really good by you guys, Martin.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and a lot of these guys I am familiar with from the draft process or from free agency in the past. But there were some guys that I wasn't as familiar with, and the opportunity to see those guys in training camp, going back to minicamp OTAs, I was able to give a perspective on those guys as well. So it was a good process, very good process. I feel good about the 53, and the next few days will be very fluid, but we'll just keep looking.
Nikki Jafala with the Washington Post. For either of you, do you plan to put anybody on short-term IR over the next 24 hours or after?
We're not going to get into what our process is going to be until everything's settled.
Okay. And at linebacker, only kept 4 guys. What was your thinking there?
We like the guys that we have right now. And, again, we're not going to get into the process of what we're going to do until everything is done.
Matt Paris with the Washington Times. Martin, Ron has talked a lot about kind of the maturity of this group and how they'll handle it going into the season. I'm just curious for your perspective on that and how maybe this roster, the guys that you decided upon, kind of reflects that image.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I think Coach did an outstanding job last year making some changes and changing the culture here. We tried to continue that process in our draft this year. And I can tell you, the guys that I've met with today, to a man, every single one of them worked his butt off to make this team, did everything right, just had the right kind of football character, the kind of football character that we need to win here. And I've been in situations, typically, you're going to have 2 or 3 guys where you're kind of glad to see those guys go, There was nobody like that. Every single one of those guys I felt great about. Love to have them all still be here.
Brian, do you have anything to add off that? Or
I'm sorry?
Do you have anything to add off that of just like kind of how tough it was to make some of these decisions?
Oh, they were all very tough. We felt like we had some really good battles all the way to the very, very end. And some guys, really showed. And I told you guys this, too, the other day, that the last game helped kind of push some things over. Dale Roberts, really had a strong game. He had actually a strong 2 weeks leading up and just really shined. And he's a guy that really is intriguing, and we want to see a little bit more out of.
And quick housekeeping note, did Jimmy Moreland have an injury? He was waived with the designation?
Yeah, he had something from the game. It was minor.
Okay.
Pete Haley with NBC Sports Washington. Ron, when you look at the roster big picture, just what are a few positions that you feel a lot better about this year compared to last season?
Well, I feel very good about the speed at wide receiver and the speed in the secondary. It was one of the things that we did intentionally. This is a young football team, and unless I miscounted, we have 25 guys with rookie year, second year, and third year in the league. We're building, and to be able to add that kind of youth onto the roster and at the same time add that speed, we feel good about it. We feel comfortable. And kudos to Martin and Marty and their team. Guys going out and finding the kind of guys that we're looking for, that we felt strongly about adding to our roster, that's a big deal. It really is. And feeling good about the wide receiver, feeling good about the secondary, I think is big. I really do, because we just feel that it was a need. It was something, again, getting a set of fresh eyes that we talked about upgrading.
Martin, we've asked many coaches about Samus Reyes, but I'm not sure we've gotten your perspective yet on him. Why did you guys feel compelled to keep him? And just what do you think about his journey going from a guy who hadn't played football until a couple weeks ago in a real game, and now he's on the initial 53?
Well, it's been very exciting watching Samus, from start to where we are right now. He's improved dramatically from going back to when he first got here. He has every tool that you want as an athlete. It's just getting him to translate that into playing this game. And he did a lot of really promising things in the games that he played in that give us an indication that he's on the right track. So we do see him as a guy who's a very valuable guy to try to develop for the future.
Can either of you guys clarify David Bada's situation?
Yeah, David hurt his leg in the game, and because of that, there's a procedure process we have to go through as far as the league is concerned with the international player program. But David is with us. David will be put on IR for the international player program. It's just it's a procedural thing that we're getting from the league.
Is that a year-ending IR or a temporary IR?
Well, again, we're getting that from the league.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Marty, with cut day moved back to this Tuesday instead of the normal Saturday time, what does that do in terms of your guys' process? You're having the extra week to see how everything shakes out across the league.
Well, what it does is it gives you a lot more time to study other people's rosters. People will be studying our roster and our practice squad. So there will be some evaluation that continues beyond today and tomorrow. I think you might see some movement from practice squad to active roster across the league. But just having that extra time gives every team an opportunity to evaluate what they have and what other teams have.
Ben Standig with The Athletic. For either of you, you only have 4 linebackers on the current 53. Just curious, that decision, in particular with David Mayo, a guy that you guys signed this offseason, why did you decide to move on from him?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, we're not through with that position. It's a position we're constantly evaluating.
Okay, and with regards to just the overall process for you, Ron, obviously last year you had your first year here, you had some different people with you. Now you have a new group. Was there anything different for you from last year to this year, or anything that you look to change that now that you've gone through this whole process you think you kind of implemented?
Well, I really appreciated, the process that we used this year. It was a little different. One thing that we did, as I told you guys, I met with the coaches. We went through everything with them. Then Martin and his staff and Marty, they came in, met with us, and then the next day, and then after that morning meeting with both staffs, then we got together, coordinators, with Marty and their staff, and we went through the roster and decided on the direction we were going to head. It was a little more in depth. I think we spent a little bit more time discussing and collaborating on it, and I really felt good about the decisions. I know from what we got, I think Martin and Marty and his staff, their staff had a real good opinion on a lot of things that really helped us.
Steve Wino, Associated Press. Martin, about Jared Patterson, obviously Ron said he had a good camp. What are your thoughts on Jared, and what do you think he can be as an NFL running back?
I think Jared can be pretty special. He's got a ways to go. Obviously, he's a young player. Did not have a great game that third game, but we saw a lot those first 2 games that was very promising from him. He's an explosive guy. He has really good vision. He brings a lot to the table. He reminds me a lot of when we had some guys here, Ricky Urbans, who I played with, former teammate of mine, Jamie Morris, former teammate of mine. Both those guys were built low to the ground, hard to tackle, and both of them had really great vision and acceleration. That's what Jared has too. Jared can squirt through the hole, and a lot of times the linebackers can't find him behind the offensive line. So he brings a lot to the table. He's going to be fun to watch this year, and hopefully he continues to grow and develop as a player.
I know obviously the roster might still be in flux, but in general, how do you feel about this team? How do you feel about kind of the team you've built here now over the last couple of years?
I think we've put together a good football team. I'm pretty confident in it. I think some of the things that we did last year, we didn't start from scratch when we got there. There was a good core, and we took that core, added some more players to it, and thought we did some good things last year. And then this year, I think we added on and feel really good about it. Feel real comfortable. And again, as I said, probably my biggest concern is just our maturity level. How mature are we in terms of getting ready for this season and the way we're going to approach this season and how we'll play.
48 with the Washington Post. This is for either of you. How important was youth, not just this year, but also in the future when you're looking big picture to build this roster?
Yeah, well, we are a very young team, as Coach just said. And, you know, with youth, you get a little bit healthier sometimes, you get a little bit faster sometimes. You know, we think we can win with these players, develop these guys, and we can have these guys here for a long time. And that's what the plan is, utilizing our draft to get younger, healthier, and faster.
And for you, Ron, you've talked about wanting to stay young, maybe because of in Carolina in 15 and 16. I wonder how you see that maybe playing out, if you can look that far, I guess, right now in the future.
Well, I just think if you can get a bunch of young guys and get them started early and develop them early and get them playing early, you know, you can hopefully set yourself up to sustain it. And that's what the goal is as I said, is to build a sustainable winning culture here. And in order to do that, I think we had to get young. And I think we're in a good place right now with it. You know, we just started really looking into the second contracts for a lot of guys. You know, we started off with Jonathan Allen, you know, being one of the cornerstones for what we're trying to build, and Brandon Scherf on the offensive line is another cornerstone that we'd like to, you know, settle in with, especially, you know, having done Chase last year just before the end of the year. You know, I think that the potential for a lot of growth is there and development. And if they're the right kind of guys, which we believe they are, we feel that we'll have a group of guys that can be around together for several years and hopefully be able to sustain that.
Ron, this is specifically for you. You said at the end of the preseason game that there were 6 positions that had some certain turnover, and I know you couldn't talk about that before cutdown day, but you mentioned Darryl Roberts. What were some of the other positions that were sort of flipped based on that game performance, if you could speak to that?
Well, I think, again, just looking at both sides of the ball, there were several guys that, you know, we had some questions about and wanted to see if they were what we thought. And so it was good to watch. I mean, and I did use Darryl Roberts as an example. He's a guy that, you know, started slow because he had to learn our system. You know, some guys had an edge on him because they knew our system. And the last couple of weeks, he really stepped up to the plate, played good football, was very physical, and caught our eye. So that was good. Watching the tight ends, you know, just kind of seeing where Samus was. You know, unfortunately, he missed the first one, the second one, but had an opportunity to play in the third one, and did some things that we saw that we said, hey, there's some growth coming there. So, you know, that was another one of the positions that you felt good about. Looking at what happened with the wide receiver position, there was a number of young guys, a couple of new guys that we had to really watch. They played a lot in the preseason game and really kind of told us that, hey, you know what, these guys can handle this type of situation, set of circumstances. So, you know, I think that led us to do the things that we wanted to do.
I forgot, Rhiannon Walker with The Athletic. Martin, this is for you. Ron has talked to us about basically the balance of keeping a guy like Samus Reyes who has that potential versus he's currently in this position where he can help you all. For you, what is your general mindset motto when you look at a roster and you say, this guy, you know, in a few years he could be somebody that could really help us, or like with a little bit more time? What is just your general position on that, and some players that you could speak to with that?
Well, you know, I think it's important, obviously, in our situation to win now, to have players who are good enough for us to win right now. But as Coach mentioned, to sustain that success, you have to have some developmental players, guys that you're working with that are young guys that are going to be better later. And Samus fits into that role perfectly. He's the guy that fits us. He's got the right mentality, the right attitude, one of the hardest working guys on our football team. So when you see that kind of physical talent, that type of physical ability, and you see that work ethic along with that, you know that's something you can work with, you can build with. So we want more guys like that. We want to have a sustainable thing, and we want to have an ecosystem where we can grow our own talent, and Samus fits into that role very well.
I'm so sorry. You mentioned his mentality, like his working hard. For you guys, I believe Samus was somebody you guys identified at the University of Florida Pro Day. What does it do for you guys when you see somebody like that so far out and it blooms into the potential that you guys can kind of see long term? Just kind of the identification process, like hitting on that exactly.
Yeah. Well, you know, Marty was at the Pro Day, and Marty does a great job on the road. He's been outstanding. Just to take a second to talk about our staff. One, I think Marty has been incredible to work with. Chris Polian has done a great job with our pro department. He has the board lined up right now as far as the practice squad guys and possibilities who are out there for waiver claims and things. Eric Stokes has been outstanding as well. And Gribbs with our draft, there's only one of our drafted players who didn't make our actual 53 this year. So Tim Gribble's done an outstanding job too. But to your question, yeah, I mean, we want to continue to build and find young guys on the road, young guys that are coming out of college they're able to get on our team and help us right away. And that's how you build a quality football team over time. We want to keep doing that. This is just one step in that direction with a guy like Samus, with a guy like Jared Patterson. We want to continue to build in that way and not have to go out in the free agency and spend big dollars to add people to our team when we can get those guys when they're young as draft choices or undrafted free agents.
John Keim, ESPN. Ron, back to the receiver position, and one of the guys you got to let go was Antonio Gandy-Golden. How disappointing, and you kept a lot of the draft picks this year, but he's a guy that you took in the 4th round last year. How disappointing is it when you have to release a guy like that in just a second year? And is it also a sign of where the position has gone for you, too?
Well, I think it's a little bit of a sign of where the position has gone, and it was tough to let him go because he had his moments. And, you know, not having a full year last year, missing out after I think it was the Giants game early in the season, really kind of set him back. And then as we started to see him come in, it was pretty much as if he was starting with this new draft class. You know, one guy that had a strong camp, obviously, was Cam Sims, and a big-bodied receiver. And so, you know, as we were looking at trying to decide, that's kind of where we went. But I do think, you know, AGG's the kind of guy that, you know, you get an opportunity to have him back, he's going to grow and get even better. I mean, he really took some huge strides this summer, and it's something we have to really look at.
And then, Martin, looking at the draft picks for this year, and you just said only one didn't make it. And obviously, you know, there's some years where sometimes those guys make it because you really need them. What was different about some of the guys in this year's class that maybe they can also not just, you know, it's not just saying, hey, we kept them, but they can keep them and then grow, develop, and help you this year?
Well, we actually were looking for guys like that. Football character was very important to us, and the ability to be coachable, the ability to have the work ethic that we look for, to fit into our culture, and those are the guys that we tried to draft this year. We'll try to draft again next year. That's the way that we plan on building it. And you know, there may be some talented guys out there who don't necessarily fit us. We got guys that fit us, and they came in and they all showed that.
I'm just looking at special teams returner, kept Dax Milne, DeAndre Carter, I know Jarrett did some. Was it important to you to have a veteran in that group with DeAndre?
Right, that's exactly what happened too. DeAndre had a very good camp first and foremost, did some really good things as a receiver, you know, in practices and in the preseason games. But his return ability is really one of the things that caught our attention. He's a dual returner. He's got that kind of flex. You know, and then with Dax, you have a guy that's got dual return ability as well. If we need a kickoff guy, Jarrett's more than available. And then we have a safety guy that basically catches everything, and that's in Humphreys. You know, we don't really want to use Adam in that position, but having 4 guys that have some return ability individually, that gives you some depth at that position. You know, the receiver position was, you know, as I said earlier, was one that we went with the idea of trying to improve with speed, and we felt really good about what we did with those guys.
Specifically for the defensive line, what things were you guys looking for your depth pieces there?
Well, really just stoutness as far as the tackles are concerned, and we have 4 guys that we really like. We really do, and feel really comfortable going forward with those guys. Then on the defensive line, the defensive end position, you know, with both James Williams-Smith and Casey Toohill, you know, we have a couple of guys that played some snaps for us last year. Both young guys that got their feet wet, and we feel good about them. And then really what we got from Shakatoni was a young guy that flashed. He did some really good things in the Baltimore game. And one play in particular that again, if I had been able to see a replay, I probably would have challenged, was the tip ball. Because again, I tried to get as close a look as I could on film, but you really can't see it. But it almost looks like that was an open hand. You know, his arm got hit, the ball moved, and so when he went to throw it, the ball was out here. You kind of push it. That, you know, that's a challengeable play, which I would have challenged in the regular season. Could have been a sack fumble. And just watching that happen early 4th quarter, here Shaka has played a lot of football, and he still showed some juice on the end. So that was one of the things that we were looking for, is a guy like that. We like Bradley King, another young guy, but we just didn't have room at that point. So he's a guy that, you know, that probably needs a little bit more developing, but he's a guy that could be a future guy.
Ron, you kind of mentioned it when John asked, but like when you have you cut Antonio, Danny Golden, you cut Keith Ishmael, even William Bradley King this year. Like young talent that you ideally probably wouldn't want to let go. But is that a sign that you guys are farther ahead into this rebuilding process that you'd like to be?
I think that's a fair assessment. I think our depth is a little bit better. Last year I think we only kept 5 wide receivers on the first cut, if I remember correctly. But then we had like 4 or 5 of them on practice squad or something like that. This year, we had 9 guys down to the end that we were trying to decide from. And so that was a sign. Same thing in the secondary with the DBs. I mean, we kept, we keep 11, I think it was, DBs total. And, and we kept one of the luxury ones with Troy because, Trapp's one of the best special teams players in the league. I mean, people have to game plan for him as a gunner, as a kickoff coverage guy, because of his speed. He's a good vice guy on punt return team, and on kickoff return, he plays in the front line. I mean, you have an opportunity when you have that other group of guys to keep a luxury player, and that's really what he is, because he's a guy that we saw some flashes. We saw a guy that showed some of his speed, did play some corner. We did see some very physical play from him as well, but he's a specialist. And, if we're going to be good as a football team, we got to be good on special teams as well.
And maybe premature to ask this because your practice squad isn't formed, but do you have an idea of who maybe this year's Jeremy Reeves is, the guy who just missed it, but if he keeps working, he can get a chance? Or is it Jeremy Reeves again?
There's a few of them this year. There really are. But we'll see. I mean, again, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow during the claim period, and then we'll see who we get back. I'll tell you that question tomorrow.
With your history with Cam Newton, I feel like you just got to ask, did his release at all pop up on your radar, and would he be of interest to you guys, or are you okay with your quarterback position?
It did pop up on our radar, but just so you know, Ryan Fitzpatrick is our starting quarterback. Okay. So that's where we are. We have 3 guys we like, that all, came to camp, did a nice job for us, and we're going to go forward with those guys.
Do you envision maybe adding at least a practice squad quarterback with Steven Montez not there? Is that important to you to have a guy like that to groom?
Well, with it not being as pressing as it was last year because of COVID, that's something that would be a luxury for us as we look at it. We have discussed the names that are out there, though.
Martin, I was curious your opinion, to get your take on Shaka Toney, because that was a big unknown coming into the draft. What did you guys see, and what's he showed for you since then?
Yeah, we saw a very high energy guy that plays really hard. He's got a lot of juice off the edge. The guy can run. He ran 4.5, for a defensive end, which is really good. We saw some of that juice in the Baltimore game on the play the coach was talking about. When he gets off, usually gets off the ball pretty quickly. He really stresses the offensive tackles. So we see that with him. It hasn't been as consistent, but he's a young player, and we want to keep working with him and keep trying to develop him.
Ron, just to look ahead to this week, obviously it's an odd week with only a couple practices. Then you have next week. What's sort of the basic plan for you guys for this week to get ready?
What we're going to do is tomorrow we're going to push things back, hold them back until we can get all 53 and the practice squad together. We'll meet. We'll go through some introductory meetings as far as prep for next week. We'll practice, and then they'll be done for the day, and then we'll come back on Thursday. Thursday will be a padded practice. It'll be the only padded practice we have this week. We'll go through that. Part of that will be, again, the introduction to the Chargers. Then the players, have by the CBA, they'll have 3 days off. They'll go Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. We'll come back in. We'll practice Monday, day off Tuesday, and we'll practice Wednesday on up until game day.
Can I ask, did you do like a presentation to the team with Fitzpatrick to name him the starter?
No, not yet. You guys are the first ones to know.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Just so you know, I am smirking.